Aloha Ohana, happy 2021. So nice to see you guys here. I hope you guys were able to share the holidays with your loved ones. Hope you guys were able to eat choke onakain grinds. I know 2020 was really rough and challenging for many of us, and I know a lot of us are still dealing with a lot of issues like unemployment, just food and taking care of our families. So if you guys are experiencing, thoughts of suicide, depression, please, guys, reach out to someone. Call a hotline, call a friend, call someone in your family, email me. I know, it's super challenging. For those of you who don't know me, hi, my name is Kai, and here on this channel, I talk about all true crime cases that happen only in the 808 state. Cases are graphic and the language is disturbing, so I don't recommend this channel for young keiki, and I don't recommend it for anybody who's super sensitive to these topics. Today's case is about a young child, and it does involve child abuse and neglect, so this is going to be a really hard one to sit through. I myself had a difficult time filming it. This is probably my 7th time trying to video this, but I know that it's super important that I do because I want to raise awareness, and I want to be here for victims. So let's get into today's case. In Orangeburg, South Carolina in 1997, Talia Williams meets one of her relatives named Naeem Williams. Now, although the two are related, it doesn't stop them from developing a romantic relationship. And before you know it, in 1999, Talia learns that she's pregnant. Unfortunately, Naeem is not having it, and he ends the relationship, and he basically just digs out on her. So Talia naturally is heartbroken, she's devastated about the breakup, but eventually, she realizes that life does go on. So although she's single and alone and pregnant now, she's super excited and looking forward to becoming a mother. On March 20th, 2000, Talia gives birth to a beautiful baby girl who she names Talia Williams. Talia Imani Williams was born a bit underweight, and as she got older, she was diagnosed with a medical condition called incontinence. And I had to look up the definition. Incontinence is basically when your body cannot control your bladder and bowel movements. So regardless of this condition, Talia said she really wanted Talia to live life and experience life to the fullest. And she was looking forward to doing all, the normal mother and daughter stuff with Talia. Talia said Talia loved to play peekaboo and patty cake. Talia loved to sing, she loved to give hugs, and she was just a really happy, always smiling little girl. Talia said when she was having a bad day, she would just walk in the house, and hearing little Talia say, "Hi, Mommy," would just immediately brighten her spirit. When Naeem broke up with Talia, she began a relationship with a woman, and both Naeem's and Talia's family was not happy about this at all. Talia's family actually told her that she couldn't raise Talia in a gay relationship, and Talia believes this is when all the accusations against her started. On December 4th, 2004, in a family court hearing, Talia is accused of being unable to properly care for Talia, which resulted in Talia being malnourished and having stunted development. After a bitter custody battle, Talia's father, Naeem, is awarded full custody of Talia. On December 14, 2004, Talia is moved from Orangeburg, South Carolina to Hawaii, where her father Naeem is stationed in the Army. So just 10 days after the family court hearing, Talia's whole entire world is turned upside down. And Talia is super upset about this because up until this point, she had no idea that Naeem was going to do that, let alone be able to do that. So he moves her out of South Carolina, everything that this little girl knows, and moves her to Hawaii where she has nobody. Everything is super new to her. At the time, Naeem and his wife, Delilah's son Williams, lives here at 195 Ojai-Ala Court on Wheeler Army Airfield Base. Naeem is a specialist in the Army, and Delilah is hired as a clerk at the Child Youth Services at Schofield Barracks. And basically, as a clerk, her job was to process paperwork, registration, data entry, and enrolling children into programs and recreational activities. Now, while her two parents are at work, Talia is enrolled in the Child Development Center. On January 10, 2005, Naeem and Delilah get into this huge fight. And now there were accusations that Naeem was unfaithful. I don't know if this particular argument was about his infidelity, but this fight is so huge that Naeem actually moves out of the family townhouse and he moves into his own small apartment in the barracks. Now, when he moves out, he leaves Talia with Delilah, which pisses Delilah off. She is not happy about this. So on January 11th, 2005, the next day, Delilah shows up to Naeem's apartment with Talia in tow, and they get into a physical altercation. Delilah actually physically assaults Naeem. So he calls the military police, and Delilah is arrested. She's charged with 2 counts of assault and endangering the welfare of a minor. On February 1st, 2005, Naeem and Delilah are interviewed by Terry Martin. Terry Martin is a social worker from the Army's Family Advocacy Program. And basically, Family Advocacy Program get involved because they're trying to assess whether or not they need to intervene for the safety of Talia, who is 4 years old at this time. So the Family Advocacy Program, I wasn't really sure what they provide, so I looked on their website. And basically the program is for military soldiers and their families. What they do is they kind of help prepare soldiers and families transition into the unique challenges of military lifestyle. And so I kept reading it, and what they say is that they're dedicated to the prevention of domestic abuse, child abuse and neglect, and they offer education, they offer investigation, intervention, prompt reporting, and treatment. And so Terry Martin, he comes and he interviews Naeem and Delilah, and what he concludes after interviewing them is that Delilah has a lot of anger issues. She's unable to manage her anger properly. And he also says, and I quote, Delilah has a presence of the classic dynamics of family violence, end quote. And what's interesting to me is that Terry does not interview Talia at all, and he doesn't really say much about Naeem's, role in this whole altercation. And this is the kicker. He says in his report that Talia was not present at the time of the assault, which is just straight up bullshit, because that is the whole reason why the Family Advocacy Program got involved in the first place, is because of the assault, and she was endangering a minor. So I don't know why Terry Martin didn't include that, but that's what he did. On February 16, 2005, based on Terry Martin's final report, the Family Advocacy Program concludes that there's no further action necessary. So in regards to this family and this particular case and incident, the Family Advocacy Program just, it's done. They're not going to provide any treatment, any education. They're not going to provide any parenting classes, no surprise unannounced house visits to check on Talia to see if she's doing okay. And that is so bizarre to me, because at this time, Delilah is also 8 months pregnant. She's about to give birth. So I have no idea why they came up with that, but that's what they did. So after this, everything goes back to the way it was, and Naeem ends up moving back into the family townhouse. Now, in December 2004, when Talia moved to Hawaii, she, like I said, she basically was moving into a house of strangers, and she didn't know Naeem, and she didn't know her stepmother, and vice versa. Naeem had no idea who his daughter was at all. And from what I read and researched, it doesn't seem like Tarshia and Naeem communicated at all about Talia. So now Naeem and Delilah are dealing with Talia's incontinence, right? They think that she's wetting herself and soiling herself on purpose. And they believe that the only way to deal with this, the only way to teach Talia not to wet herself, is to discipline her. And by discipline, I do mean abuse. Now this is where it's gonna get graphic, so if you guys wanna skip ahead or mute it or turn it off, totally understand. I still love you guys, but this is where the case is gonna get really graphic. So first they start by taking away all of her toys. And of course that doesn't work because she is incontinent. Her body is physically unable to control her bladder and bowel movements. And now, what's so bizarre to me is that if this little 4-year-old girl is constantly wetting herself, why wouldn't you take her to the doctor? Why wouldn't you try and see what's going on, you know? Or why wouldn't you put a pull-up on her or a diaper? Like, I just don't get it. So anyways, they take away all her toys. That doesn't work. And then they take away her bed. They take away all her bedding. Her bed, her mattress, her pillows, her blankets. So this poor little girl has to sleep on the cold, hard floor. And of course that doesn't work, right? Naeem and Delilah become very frustrated and angry about Talia constantly wetting herself. So they physically and start verbally abusing this little girl every day. What they do, they hit Talia with this plastic ruler, which Naeem named Mr. Paddle. They force Talia to do strenuous exercises, and then when she's unable to continue, they beat her some more. They would duct tape this poor little girl's body to a bedpost, right? They duct tape her body to the bedpost. They duct tape her mouth to muffle her cries and screams, and they duct tape her eyes so she can't see the blows coming. And they beat this girl with a belt, sometimes up to an hour. They try to cover the marks on her body, you know, so people at school, especially at school, wouldn't see them. However, just 2 weeks after that whole interview with Terry Martin from the Family Advocacy Program, on February 28th, 2005, people from school noticed these marks and bruises on Talia. So they notify the military police and Naeem is arrested. Michael Parker is an investigator and he's assigned to the case, and he said that when he interviewed Talia to ask her about her skin and the marks and the bruises, he said that she changed her answer several times. He said at first she said it was from her mother, and by mother I mean Delilah. She said it was from her father, then her brother, and then spider bites. So he didn't really get a clear answer from her, but then again, she is 4 years old, right? They take Talia to see a military doctor, and this military doctor examines Talia for 6 hours. 6 hours, guys. Like, that's so bizarre to me. Like, really? 6 hours? Anyway, so the military doctor examines her for 6 hours, and he, in his medical professional opinion, he says that she suffers from what is called desquamation. And again, I had to look this word up because I'm such a genius. Desquamation is basically when your skin suffers from this infection from not properly taking care of your skin. And then he says that he doesn't suspect that it's from child abuse. Now, okay, oh my gosh, like, these guys are just geniuses, right? Like, okay, if this girl has desquamation, and that whole definition is because it's a skin infection because you're not taking care of your skin. Well, obviously, she's 4 years old. Obviously, her caretakers are not taking care of her, and that's how she got desquamation. So he doesn't even ask any more questions. He doesn't follow up. What he does, he tells the military police, I don't think this is from child abuse, and Talia is returned back to Naeem and Delilah. I mean, and then that's it. That's it. Nothing more. Naeem and Delilah would yell at Talia every day. They would call her retarded. They would call her stupid. Delilah would tell her she hated her and that she ruined her life, and she wished that Talia didn't come to Hawaii to live with them. Talia was forced to eat her own feces, and sometimes they would starve her for days at a time. They would slam her head into walls. They would body slam her. Delilah admits to ripping out a big chunk of Talia's hair once, all because Talia was walking too slow for Delilah's liking on the staircase. Eventually, you know, they beat her so bad that they weren't able to hide the black eyes and the bruises and the scratches on Talia. So they pull her out of school to avoid anyone from finding out. So they pull her out of school, I believe it was on March 21st, 2005, but they officially withdraw her on April 29th, 2005. Now, per the court order, Talia's mom, Tarshia, was granted two 15-minute phone calls with Talia a week. And I believe it was on Mondays and Thursdays. But Tarshia said that at most times, you know, the phone calls wouldn't even happen because Delilah would block the phone calls from happening. On April 7, 2005, Tarshia's phone records show she actually tried calling Talia 21 times. 21 times. She called them 21 times, but she said she never spoke to Talia once because nobody answered the phone. And Tarshia said the last time she would ever speak to Talia is in March 2005. Tarshia said, and I quote, "My daughter constantly pleaded and begged me to get her out of the situation. She told me she was being beaten. I didn't have the money to fly to Hawaii and get her out of the situation," end quote. Tarshia said she did notify military officials and Wheeler Elementary School that Talia told her that she was being beaten, but Tarshia said that military officials basically ignored her and that the school told her Naeem and Delilah moved back to the mainland, and that was it. So now Talia doesn't go to daycare, and so she's forced to stay home all day unsupervised by herself. She wasn't allowed to eat or drink anything, and she wasn't allowed to leave her room. So one time, you know, this poor girl is super hungry, so she goes downstairs and tries to get some food. And when Naeem found out, he punches her in the stomach for doing that. On June 27, 2005, two co-workers, Donna Small and Rochelle Goodwin, they used to work with Delilah over at Child Youth Services, and they noticed that they haven't seen Talia in about 3 months. Okay, so this is June, and Talia was last seen in March. And so the two women are worried, and the reason why that they're worried is because they overheard Delilah say, "It's okay to whip a child, just don't leave marks." So these two women suspect that maybe Talia is being abused, and that's why she's not being in school. So what they do, they contact the social worker by the name of Hilda Borja. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right. Anyway, they contact this social worker, and, you know, they tell her their concerns. And Miss Hilda says, "Oh, okay, you know, I'll get back to you." Hilda never gets back to the women. She never makes a report. She never tells the women to make a report. And then again, nothing happens. I mean, this little girl has been failed so many times. You know, from the time she got there in December, there were so many opportunities for somebody to report this, but nobody does. I mean, everybody just turns their eye, you know, they just turn their head, and this poor little girl continues to be abused. Now, on June 29, 2005, Delilah said she comes home from work and she notices that Talia has wet herself again. So this sends Delilah into a rage. And Delilah says this, and I quote, "I started stomping on her. I just continued stomping on her until I felt like a bone cracked under my foot, and she defecated on herself," end quote. I cannot, ooh, Delilah. So Delilah says she then forces Talia to sit on the toilet, and then she pushes super hard on Talia's stomach. I don't know why she does this. So she pushes on Talia's stomach so hard that a pipe on the toilet breaks and water begins to leak. And Delilah gets even more pissed. So she grabs Talia by the hair, right? Grabs Talia's hair and slams her head into the wall. And then after she does this, she tells Talia to go to her room. And this is the kicker, guys. After this, Delilah said she went to go get her nails done. After she abused this girl, broke her ribs, she goes and gets her nails done. I mean, Talia Williams, oh girl, something is seriously wrong with you, but we're gonna keep going, okay? On this same day, military police receive a phone call from a Maribel Martinez, who is a neighbor to Naeem and Delilah's. And she reports that she's been hearing a child scream for over an hour. So the military police, they make their way over to the Williams household, and because of probable cause, which is, involving a child at this point, Naeem and Delilah grant access into their home. Okay, if you have probable cause, especially about a child screaming, police, can enter. Most times you need a warrant, but because this was probable cause, Naeem and Delilah open the door. So the military police, they go inside the house, they make their way, I can't even talk today. They make their way upstairs, and when they get upstairs to Talia's room, they find Talia naked, standing next to a pile of feces, and with scratches and marks all over her body. And when the investigator, I think his name is Mark Myers. Yeah, so there was this investigator there named Mark Myers. So when Mark Myers and the military police try to talk to Talia, she doesn't answer. She doesn't speak to them at all, right? And so Mark Myers, the investigator, he goes to Naeem and he asks Naeem, what happened to Talia's face? She has scratches on her face. What happened? And Naeem tells Mark, oh, she went to a birthday party a couple days ago and some kid scratched her on the face. And that was it. Okay, I can't even, obviously they made a report because, we know about this situation because they must have made a report. But, okay, scratch on the face, whatever. But this girl is standing naked next to a pile of feces. That's obviously neglect. Again, they turn an eye, and I don't know why. This child is screaming. Somebody says, oh, this child is screaming for over an hour, and then you get there and you see this situation. You cannot put two and two together. It's like these people went to school in a fucking Cracker Jack. It just pisses me off. Like, I get so upset when it's a child involved. A child who is defenseless. I swear, I cannot talk today. A child who is defenseless, and cannot defend themselves, and adults that are supposed to protect and care for them, obviously Naeem and Delilah were neglecting this child. You don't ask about the pile of shit, but you ask about the scratches on her face. It's just so odd. Again, okay, I'm sorry. Let's keep going before I get off into this tangent. So per the court order, Tertia is allowed in-person visits with Talia. And on July 1st, 2005, Talia was supposed to be in South Carolina to visit her mom. But July 1st came and it went, and Talia never showed up in South Carolina. So Tertia calls the house to make arrangements. And Delilah answers the phone, and this is what she says, and I quote, guess what? I could be fucking lying. She could be in South Carolina right now, but you know what? You will never find her because you will never see her. End quote. Okay, so now I have a question. If Delilah hated Talia so bad, why didn't they send Talia to South Carolina? Like, if you hate this little girl so bad, Delilah, why not put her on a plane and send her? You can say some lies about how she got the scratches and the marks. If you're so worried about somebody asking why all these marks on her. Anyways, so on July 5th and July 8th, 2 separate days, Delilah's on the phone and she's talking to one of her cousins by the name of Chastity Tijeron. I'm great with names. Anyway, Chastity, a cousin named Chastity. And when Chastity's on the phone with Delilah, she actually hears Naeem and Delilah beating and abusing Talia. It's so bad that on July 11th, cousin Chastity places an anonymous phone call to CPS to report what she heard. And guess what? Nothing happened. CPS doesn't do anything. Nobody does anything. But thank you, Chastity, for doing your part and trying to protect little Talia. You did the right thing, for sure. On the morning of July 16, 2005, Naeem finds that Talia wet herself, okay? So Naeem spanks Talia with his belt. And later that afternoon, Naeem goes back to Talia's room to check on her, and he finds that she has wet herself again. So he's pissed. So he yells at Talia and he orders her to go get in the shower. Now, as they're walking down the hallway, as they're walking down the hallway to go, Talia to get in the shower, he actually hits her. What? What a coward, right? So he actually hits her and he punches her in the chest as they're walking in the hallway. He punches her so hard, guys, that his knuckle imprints are left on this girl's chest. You can actually see it. So this blow gets Talia so bad that she actually falls to the ground and hits her head on the floor, and she becomes unconscious. So Naeem, what he does is he picks up Talia and he puts her in a bathtub, and he puts the cold water on. He starts pouring cold water on her because he's trying to wake her up. But Talia never regains consciousness. So Talia's not waking up, and what he does is that he picks her up from out of the bathtub, and then he puts her on the floor in her room. He puts her on the cold, hard floor again. Instead of putting her on the bed, the couch, getting her some blankets, a pillow. I mean, she's not waking up, but he puts her on the floor, right? And Delilah comes in to find out what's going on, and she sees what's happening, and she tells Naeem, "Oh, Talia's faking it. Just leave her alone. She's faking it. Just leave her alone." So what do the two geniuses do? They leave this poor little girl all alone by herself in the room on the cold hard floor. She hit her head, but she's faking it. 15 minutes later, they say that they hear Talia wheezing. So Delilah goes into the room, after a little while, like 15-20 minutes, to check on Talia to see what's going on. When Delilah gets to the room, she sees that there's a discharge coming out of Talia's mouth. And apparently Delilah used to work at some emergency room. And so she sees the discharge and she believes that Talia is dead. I guess that she learned that in the ER or wherever. She checks Talia's pulse and she said that she didn't feel anything. So Delilah goes back and she tells her husband, "Your daughter is dead." Delilah tells Naeem to hold off on calling 911 because she wanted her cousin in Eva Beach to come and pick up the baby. And I guess their baby was 4 months old at this time. They had a daughter named Azra. So she wants the cousin from Eva Beach to come pick up the baby before the police get there, because Delilah knows that at this point they're in trouble and she doesn't want the police to take away the baby, right? So they wait till the cousin from Eva Beach comes. The cousin comes and picks up the baby, and they eventually place the call to EMS at 5:45 p.m. And before the EMS get there, Naeem and Delilah concoct a story about Talia slipping in the shower. Okay, so they're waiting for the EMS. They're like, "Oh, what are we gonna say? Let's say that she slipped in the shower." So when the EMS get there, they find Talia's body covered in vomit, and she appears to be in cardiac arrest. The EMS are able to revive her momentarily, but then she becomes unresponsive again with no pulse. She's taken to Wahiawa Hospital, where she's pronounced dead. EMS discover this girl's body is covered in bruises. I mean, she's got bruises on her arms, her knees, her thighs, her chest, her buttocks, as well as a cut on her back. The medical examiner's office does a report and concludes that Talia died of inflicted head trauma due to battered child syndrome. And they note that Talia has over 100 injuries of various degrees on her body. I mean, this girl was just abused and tortured and neglected till she died. So on Sunday, July 17, 2005, the next day, poor Tarshia, the mom, has no idea that all of this is going on. So Tarshia receives a phone call from one of Naeem's cousins who tell her, "Hey, I'm sorry that I have to tell you this, but Talia has passed." I mean, nobody called Tarshia while this was happening to let her know that her baby girl was dying, dead. I mean, she found out the next day. I mean, this is horrible. Of course, Tarshia, was crying and just devastated and heartbroken and in shock. I mean, this poor mother. No mother should ever have to bury their child, let alone you find out that the person that helped you make this baby actually is responsible for killing this baby. I mean, my heart goes out to Tarshia. It really does. Naeem and Delilah are both arrested, and because Naeem is a soldier and Delilah a civilian, Their cases are separately pursued. So Naeem is going to be, with the military, and Delilah's will be with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Although Hawaii abandoned capital punishment in 1957 because this murder took place on military base, Naeem is eligible for the death penalty. Okay, so let's talk about the trial. So they both get arrested, and then their strategies are to blame each other. So they both admit that they abused and basically beat Talia, but they want to blame and point the finger at one another. Naeem's lawyer, by the name of John Phillipsborn, he claims that Talia died at the hands of Delilah. He says that Delilah is the more violent parent of the two, and he claims that that Talia died of old injuries and not a fresh head injury. He said really Naeem was under the control of Delilah, and that Delilah was the mastermind behind everything, and basically was the one that would egg Naeem on and tell him to abuse Delilah. Naeem says that he was disciplining Talia for her bathroom accidents and taking his frustrations about his marriage out on Talia. Naeem said that the night before, so July 16, when that murder happened, he said he had come home from a full night of drinking. So this grown-ass man is taking out his frustrations out on a 4-year-old. That's real soldier-like. Naeem goes on to say that, he was unfaithful in his marriage, and that he and Delilah fought about his infidelity, finances, the stress of having a new baby, and that Delilah suffered from depressive disorder. What? Depressive disorder. Prosecutors offered Delilah a plea deal, and basically, listen to this, guys. They offered Delilah a plea deal before they even know the extent of the abuse. They offer her a plea deal so that she testifies against her husband, because prosecutors believe that it's the blow that Naeem dealt to Talia that actually killed her. So they want Naeem more than they want Delilah. So they offer her this plea deal, say, hey, if you testify against your husband, and if you plead guilty to murder, you'll only get 20 years prison time. So of course Delilah takes the deal. 20 years, I know, guys, 20 years, really? Personally, in my opinion, she should get life without the possibility of parole. But that's just my opinion. So anyway, Delilah takes it, and she receives 20 years in prison with 5 years of, supervised release. So in court, while Delilah is giving her testimony, she showed no emotion. She told the court about the daily abuse inflicted upon Talia by her and her husband. And they said her voice was calm. She showed no remorse. She admits that everything she did to Talia was wrong, but she claims she's not responsible for Talia's death because listen to this. She said she's not responsible for Talia's death because she stopped beating Talia in March of 2005. And then that there's no way that all my beatings from before could have caused Talia's death. Anyway, that's Delilah's claim. Naeem's lawyer said Delilah was lying and basically was continuing to beat Talia until the day she died, and that Delilah was saying all of this because she wanted to cooperate with prosecutors and lighten her sentence, which I believe as well. On April 24, 2005, Naeem is committed of capital murder. He's guilty on all 5 counts, which is murder, aiding murder, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and making false statements, right? So remember, because they lied, they said she slipped in the shower. So he's charged with capital murder, guilty on all 5 counts, which is good. Yay, justice is served. So now, after this, the jury, there was like 12 jurors. Now the jury will have to decide if Naeem is going to be sentenced to death, because remember, he's eligible for the death penalty, or to life in prison without parole. So Naeem says this in court, and I quote, okay, Talia deserved a better father than me. Instead of helping her and protecting Talia, I hurt and I killed her, end quote. Naeem asked the court not to sentence him to death so that he can have the chance to be a better father to 2 of his other children. So he has 2 other children. And he has a son named Khalif who lives in Georgia, and a daughter named Azra. Remember, Azra was the baby when Talia was there. That's Delilah's daughter. The two children said they love their father and they have a great relationship with him, even though he's locked up. I mean, this is so bizarre. I mean, right here, guys. Children, all they want is love and acceptance and to be loved by in the eyes of their parents. I mean, these two kids, Khalif and Azra, they know that their father beat their half-sister to death, but they still love him. They still want to be a part of his life, even after what he did. I mean, it just goes to show, like, children and the unconditional love they have with their parents. It just blows my mind. Naeem's defense lawyers try to convince the juries to spare his life. So they try to humanize him. And what they do is they bring in a couple witnesses to testify on Naeem's character, right? And as the defense team, that's a good tactic, right? Because he's facing the death penalty. So they're trying to humanize him because the jurors see him, they find him guilty, capital murder. They see him as this monster. So in order to humanize him so that he gets life in prison versus the death penalty, they bring in witnesses. And some of the witnesses were a former lover, one of his aunts, I think his sister, a former federal prison inmate, somebody that, he was in prison with, and an older cousin. So, all these witnesses, they come and they testify on Naeem's character and, they say all the good stuff. So it must have worked because the jury, they're unable to reach an unanimous verdict on the death penalty. So on June 26, 2014, Naeem gets life imprisonment without parole. So it must have worked. I mean, the witnesses came in and told their sad story about Naeem. And so the juries are deadlocked, they're unable to all agree that Naeem should get the death penalty. So it defaults to life imprisonment. So I wanted to say a couple things about what the U.S. District Judge J. Michael Seabright said, because, gosh, I just read his comments and I just love this guy. So he said that although the plea agreement with Delilah was distasteful and difficult to swallow, which we all can agree, it was necessary in prosecuting a murder case against Naeem, her husband. The judge went on to say, and I quote, "From your testimony on that stand, it became clear to me you wanted Talia to suffer, that you were okay with her dying. To you, Talia was just a nuisance, a problem in the household that needed to go away." End quote. Oh, he also says, Talia simply wanted acceptance, love, and a family, but instead got hateful abuse, end quote. Gosh, this judge, I'm glad. I mean, he gave it to Delilah, and, as somebody should. Okay, this last part. So, back in 2005, when Talia was alive, and actually, up until 2005, military officials were not mandated to report suspected child abuse on base. So, families on base were treated separately than civilians, right? If you weren't on a military base, you will have to report suspected child abuse and neglect. But if you were on the base, it wasn't required. For those of you who are in the military or live on base, it's like they have their own world out there. They have their own laws. I mean, military police is called, not civilian police. So it's different. So anyways, and this left a lot of military children unprotected, right? Like Talia, right? If the military base at that time was mandated to report to Child Protective Services, it probably, hopefully, would have been a different outcome. So anyways, because of Talia's situation, Tarshia wanted this to change, right? She wanted military families, especially children prone to child abuse and neglect, a layer of protection. So she brought the concept to Representative Tulsi Gabbard, who would introduce this law or bill into Congress. Gabbard pushed for Talia's law. On December 23, 2016, President Obama signed it into law. It's called Talia's Law. And basically, Talia's Law requires service members and their dependents to immediately report known and suspected child abuse and neglect to CPS and or the military point of contact. So this is one good thing that came out of this, and thank you Tarshia and Representative Tulsi Gabbard for doing this. So now children on military bases have an extra layer layer of protection. And suspected or known child abuse and neglect have to be reported to CPS or their military point of contact. So this was a difficult case, guys. I don't know if it was difficult for sure. I mean, this little girl was failed so many times by so many people. And you know, it just goes to show you guys, if you guys see something or hear something, say something, because your inaction or action could change somebody's life drastically. It could save somebody's life. I mean, can you imagine if all those people in Talia's story at some point actually did something and followed up and asked questions, and you know, maybe the outcome would be different today. Maybe Talia would be what? How old would she be right now? 15 or 16 years old? Having and living a normal teenage life. Like, guys, it's so important. Don't take these things lightly. I mean, it just breaks my heart. This case is super sad. Anyways, that's all I have for you guys today. I want to apologize for the glare in the back. I'm working on it, you know. It's a work in progress. And I couldn't talk today. I was like stuttering all over my words. I'm telling you guys, this case was very hard for me to do. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys subscribe. Hope you guys like this video. Okay, I'll see you guys next week. Aloha. Bye. Bye. Bye.